With the black stone goblins driven off, Baradoc is able to turn his attention northward. Gathering his officers together, he makes plans for the assault on Stormpeak Hold. Stormpeak Hold is built into a spur of the Silver Mountains, overlooking the approach to the city of Deepstone Delve. Surrounded by sheer cliff faces, the only entrance is underground, through the halls of the city. Deepstone's defences are formidable. A switchback road leads up toward the gate, winding through stone bunkers. At the top rests a thick curtain wall, protected by two mighty bastions. Approaching leaves the attacker exposed to the missiles of Stormpeak Hold until they can cross the curtain wall. Within the curtain wall is a bailey, dominated by the great gates of the city itself, built into the mountain and honeycombed with arrow slits, embrasures, and machicolations. An assault on the city will cost many lives. Thazzik, the oldest of the dwarves, was a stubble-faced child when Stormpeak fell. He remembers a water shaft, narrow at the top, but wide enough for a dwarf beneath, and a hidden postern in the catacombs. If a small group were able to sneak inside and open the gates for the army, Baradoc could storm the city from inside the mountain. So for our scenario today, we'll have two rangers. We will have Falcon Shield Splitter, and he's got his bodyguard from the South Pass Spears, a dwarf at arms, and a guards dwarf, along with an archer from the Stouthearts. We also have Thazzik, who is a wizard from the Frostgrave rules, slightly modified to fit a little bit better with Rangers of the Shadow Deep, and his bodyguard are from the Hammerheart Oathsworn. We have a dwarf at arms and a guards dwarf. A little bit of modification to the stats, because the Rangers of the Shadow Deep stats I would generally consider to be human stats. I've gone through and reduced all of the move scores by 1 and increased the armour by 1 to better match the depiction of dwarves in Oathmark. We'll be using red dice for all of the enemies and blue dice for the dwarves. So for this scenario, the dwarves have infiltrated through underground caverns and will make their way into the dwarf hold, where they'll have to get past the orc guards and open up the southern gate here to allow the army to enter the dwarf halls. For the first roll of the game, Thazzik will be attempting to animate a large stone construct before the game itself actually begins. So his target number for this will be 16. 5? No. Bugger. Painted that miniature for nothing. Never mind. Let's get started with the first turn and the ranger phase. We'll begin turn 1 by making 2 stealth rolls to see how quiet the dwarves are and to see if we can move any of the orc sentries. So we're going to start with the dwarf archer, who has +3 to his stealth. The target number we're looking for is 10, so we're going to need a 7. Success there. And the other one we'll roll for is Thazzik, who has +1 to stealth, so he's looking for a 9. Success there, so we get to move 2 of the orc sentries. We're going to want to move the sentries out of the way so we can get as far into the dwarf halls as we can before we are spotted. So we're going to grab this guy who's closest, and he'll be moving 6 inches over here. And we're going to get this guy out of the way as well, just because he's closest to the southern door. So let's get him out there. And then we move back to the Rangers phase. So let's start by activating Forgrin, and we're going to activate the 2 dwarves next to him as well. And they are going to begin to move forward. So they have 5 inches of movement. We still want to keep cover for the time being. And then Thazzik will come around this way. Thazzik is also going to attempt to cast Elemental Shield on himself. He requires a 10 to succeed at that. A 12 is a success, so he's going to absorb the first 3 points of damage that he takes. And he'll be activating his bodyguards as well. Quietly, Cardan. Well, they'll do a double move, why not?
You just focus on yourself, Harmo.
Alright, and on to the monsters, or the creature phase. So we're going to roll random movement for the orcs that haven't moved. So let's start with this guy here, going towards the top of the D20.
Nothing but manky bones down here.
Means that this fella is going to move to the back corner.
He's holding out on
This one here.
I ain't got no
Move
meat,
that way.
but I'm eyeing
pain.
you up, Creek. You're
There.
looking real
This guy.
tasty. Quiet
Back
maggots.
this way.
You'll bring old Slimeskin or the chief down on us, and it'll be a whipping.
And finally the archer there.
And back to the mine.
Who's going to move this way.
What's that? Do you smell boar?
And then on the companion phase, we'll move the dwarf archer up and around here, 5 inches, followed by 2.5 to get himself behind cover. Nothing happens in the event phase of turn 1 or 2. So with the board looking like this at the end of turn 1, let's move on to turn 2. We are still hidden, so let's start turn 2 with a couple of stealth rolls. We've got a +3 from the dwarf archer, so needing a 7. No success there. And a +1 from Thazzik, so needing a 9. No luck there either, so we don't get to move any orcs this turn. That complicates matters. Let's start by activating Thazzik and his 2 companions. His companions are going to move forward up to 7.5 inches. We'll get them behind the cover of the stalagmites there. Thazzik himself move up to 5 inches this way. So he remains hidden, but he can draw a line of sight to Forgrin, and he is going to cast Shield on Forgrin, which will increase Forgrin's armour by 2 for the rest of the game. He requires a 14 to successfully cast the spell. A 13, no luck.
Bother! That's not how that goes.
Alright, we'll follow that up with Forgrin and his 2 companions. We're going to be a bit reckless. Dwarves aren't known for their stealth, so let's have Forgrin make a move.
Oh, forget it. Let's just split some skulls.
Moving us 5 inches forward, followed by 2.5 for his second action.
Oi, arse face. Oink, oink.
2 inches there, followed by 3,
Kak fair, Fogren.
followed by 2.5.
Looks like we're doing this, lads. You just try and keep up.
And let's just get stuck in. Right, onto the creatures phase. So unfortunately the jig is up. The creatures are now alerted, so they will move towards their closest enemy. So our first orc here is going to move into combat with Forgrin,
Dwarf flesh.
and we'll fight around a combat there. Forgrin gets +4 to his roll, and the orc gets +2 to his.
Come on, come on.
They both get 14, so they both strike at each other.
Ah, you brute.
Forgrin's armour is 13, so he will take 1 point of damage, taking him down to 18 points left. The orc's armour is 12, so the orc will take 2 points of damage, and he will have 8 points left. This orc archer has a shot at this dwarf at arms. The dwarf will add +3 to his roll. The orc archer will add +2 to his. The dwarf manages to dodge that with an 18 versus an 8. This archer will move down here where he has line of sight against this guard dwarf. The dwarf adds +3 to his roll. The orc will add +1. He's at -1 of having moved. The dwarf dodges that easily with an 18. The other orcs are going to move towards their closest target.
I'm gonna rip off your limbs. Perfect. I'm starving.
This one does have line of sight, so he's going to run around his mate and rush forward 9 inches.
Dig in, boys.
On to the companion phase of turn 2. The Dwarf Archer currently doesn't have line of sight to anybody, so we're going to move him 4 inches over here, where he can draw line of sight onto that Orc. The Dwarf Archer is +2 to his shoot, so he adds 2 to his roll, and the Orc adds +2 in his defence. A 5 versus a 15 means the Orc dodges that shot without a problem. That's the end of the companion phase. Turn 2, there is no event phase, so it's on to the Ranger's turn 3. We're going to start by activating Thorgrim and his mates. So we'll get this Guards Dwarf to move forward into combat with that Orc. And with a second action he will attack. He gets a +5, +3 base, and then +2 for having an extra friendly model in contact. And the Orc gets +2.
Take that.
A 10 versus an 18. The Orc definitely won that one there. The Guards Dwarf has 12 armour, so he's going to take 6 points of damage, which takes him down to 6 remaining.
Oh.
Thorgrim's going to try next. He's +4 base, +2 for having a friend nearby, so +6 versus the +2 of the Orc.
Rah.
A 19 is definitely going to win that fight. 19 + 6, 25, minus the Orc's armour of 12, gives us 13 points of damage, which is enough to kill that Orc.
Ha! Get off it.
And then the Dwarf at Arms is going to move forward and we'll try fighting that Orc. The Dwarf gets +3, the Orc gets +2. A 13 for the Dwarf is going to carry that fight. That is enough to cause 1 point of damage to the Orc, so the Orc has 9 points remaining. Thazzik will then activate, and he will activate the Archer, a companion within 3 inches. We'll start with the Archer. The Archer will take a shot at that Orc again. Once again, both dice are at +2.
Come on, old fig. Get your eye in.
A 20 from the Orc definitely dodges a 17 from the Archer, so no luck there. And Thazzik is going to move 5 inches forward. And we're going to try once again to get shield onto Thorgrim. So the target number for that is 14.
Skyrim!
3, definitely no luck there.
No, that's not it either.
Alright, on to the creature phase. Let's start with this Archer, who'll be shooting this Guardsman. The Archer adds +2 to his dice. The Dwarf is going to add +3. With a 12, that'll definitely hit, but it doesn't do any damage because the Dwarf's armour is 12.
Oh, you bastard.
This Orc is going to have to move to get line of sight on anything. So we're going to have him step out, and he'll be shooting at the Dwarf Archer.
I see you.
Both characters will be adding +2 to their roll. With an 8 versus a 10, that arrow is going to miss. We'll activate this Orc, who is going to move into contact with that Dwarf at Arms, and do a fight there. The Orc will be adding +4 because he's got a friend there. The Dwarf will be adding +3.
I'll crush you.
Ow. So we have a 20 there from the Orc versus the Dwarves 4, so that definitely wins. So 20 versus an armour of 13 means 7 points of damage, giving that Dwarf 5 left. His mate will then attack as well.
I smell your flesh.
He adds +4 and the Dwarf gets +3. The Dwarf wins that one there with a 16. 16 versus the armour of 12 means 4 points of damage to that wounded Orc, so he's down to 5. The other Orc here is going to rush forward as well. With 9 inches, he'll get into contact with that Guards Dwarf.
You're mine.
And we'll do a fight there. The Guards Dwarf adds 3 to his dice, the Orc adds 2 to his. The Orc definitely wins that with a 20 versus a 12. 20 versus the armour of 12 of the Guardsman means he's going to take 8 points of damage, which is enough to kill him.
Aha. 20 versus 12. 20 versus the armour of 12 of the Guardsman means he's going to take 8 points of damage, which is enough to kill him. 20 versus the armour of 12 of the Guardsman means he's going to take 8 points of damage, which is enough to kill him.
Torgrim.
The end of the creatures phase, we're on to the companions phase. So we've got these two dwarves here. 5 inches of movement will be enough to get this fella around the back here, and he'll fight that orc. The dwarf gets +3. The orc receives +2.
I've got you, Congress.
19 from the orc versus 17 from the dwarf means the orc definitely wins that. 19 versus an armour of 13 means 6 points of damage. So that dwarf has 6 remaining.
Oh, what? Is he your mate?
And this fella, I think, will just get around there. And he will attack that orc.
You bastard.
So that guards dwarf adds 3 and the orc gets +2. We have a 21 from the orc, which is definitely going to win that. Versus an armour 12 means 9 points of damage. So the dwarf has 3 points left. Ouch. That was rough. At the event phase of turn 3, the door to the east opens and a troll lumbers in. Lovely. And we're going to flip over our first event card, which is going to be a 5. What does a 5 do? 5. There is a strange rune. Choose one figure and have that figure make a read runes roll. Target number of 10. Well, that's going to be Thazzik, because he has the best read rune score at plus 1. Oh, gods. All right, well, that'll do then. So the number we need to roll is 9. Nope, no luck there, so never mind that. On to Ranger turn 4. Beginning with Thorgrim again, you're supposed to keep the same order, so we started with Thorgrim before Thazzik, so we better continue doing that. Thorgrim and 2 companions, he's got 2 dwarves next to him. So we're going to start with Thorgrim himself. He'll move into the orc fighting the guardsman there and make an attack. Thorgrim receives +6, +4 base, and +2 for having a friend there, and the orc gets +2. And 11 versus a 10 means that Thorgrim does win, but an 11 is not enough to do any damage. The guards dwarf will attack next. The guards dwarf gets +5, +3 base, and +2 for having a friend nearby, versus the orc's +2. A 17 +5 is a 22 versus a 12, means that the dwarf wins. 22 versus the orc's armour of 12 does 10 points of damage, which is enough to kill that orc.
Take that.
And we're going to have this dwarf at arms activate as well, and he'll be attacking the wounded orc there. The dwarf receives +3. The orc receives +2. Both the 2s means the dwarf wins, but it's not enough to cause any damage.
Your breath stinks.
Alright, Thazzik is up next. He has 1 companion within 3 inches of him, which is the dwarf archer. So we'll activate the dwarf archer first, and we'll have him shoot at that orc archer.
Come on, old fig. It's time.
The dwarf receives a +2, and the orc archer receives a +1. 19 is going to beat a 15, so no luck there. That arrow goes wide.
Not again.
And as a second action, we're going to have this dwarf advance forward because we need to keep pushing in. Thazzik then gets to activate. He's not having any luck trying to increase Thorgrim's armour, so instead he is going to move down here, and he will fire an elemental bolt towards the orc archer in front of him. So, attempt to cast that first. His target number for that is 10. He succeeds in casting, so he makes a ranged attack roll at +8. So he gets +8, the orc archer gets +1. Wow, okay, a 27 versus an 8 definitely wins that. 27 versus armour of 11 does 16 points of damage, which is well and truly enough to kill that orc archer. That's the end of the ranger phase. It is on to the creature phase. We are starting with the troll. The troll has a movement of 4, and it's going to be moving towards its closest target.
Hey,
6 inches with a double action.
you're not supposed to be here.
The orc archer here will continue to shoot at the dwarf guardsman. The orc archer receives +2. The guardsman receives +3. A 13 definitely beats a 10, so the arrow goes wide. We have this fresh orc who will be attacking, probably that dwarf at arms there, who is slightly more wounded. The orc doesn't get the friendly bonus because he's got a dwarf behind him, so he's just +2 against the dwarf at arms +3. A 7 versus a 7, nothing's going to happen there, that's not high enough to cause any damage. And finally, this orc will attack that dwarf at arms. Again, orc gets +2 and the dwarf gets +3. The orc's going to win that with a 14. 14 versus armor 13 means it's going to cause 1 point of damage. That's the end of the creature phase, so we're on to the companion phase. So the final remaining companion is this dwarf at arms, who will be attacking that orc. So the dwarf receives +3, the orc receives +2. The dwarf is going to win that with an 18 versus the 16 of the orc. 18 versus armor 12 means the orc takes 6 points of damage and it has 4 remaining. That's the companions phase done. So on to the event phase, and we'll flip over a new card. A King of Hearts. Well, a red king. A red king, 2 orc soldiers appear in front of door 2. It's the Ranger phase on turn 5, and we are swiftly running out of time. Again, we'll start with Forgrin and his companions. Forgrin is going to make a move around and behind this orc. And his second action will be to attack it. He receives +4. He doesn't get the friendly bonus because this model is also in contact with that dwarf. So just +4 against the orc's +2. And 18 versus a 14 means that Forgrin wins. 18 versus the orc's armor of 12 does 6 points of damage, which is enough to kill that orc.
Hey, Peggy!
We'll have this dwarf at arms attacking this orc. He does get a friendly bonus now, so he is at +5 versus the orc's +2. A 19 is definitely going to beat a 7 though, so 19 versus the dwarf's armor of 13 is 6 points of damage, and that dwarf at arms is cut down.
Miraculous.
And finally we have this guard's dwarf who is going to move into contact with that orc, and we'll try that again. Oh, I've forgotten the two-handed weapon bonus. Never mind. This guard's dwarf gets +5 versus the orc's +2.
Yeah, burn fast, burn like an artist.
A 20 versus a 10 means that the guard's dwarf wins. 20 versus armor 12 is 8 points of damage, which is more than enough to kill that orc.
Yeah, that.
+2 for having a two-handed weapon, which I already forgot. Alright, next up is going to be Thazzik, who can activate 2 companions. We're going to start with the dwarf archer. The dwarf archer will take a shot at the troll. The dwarf archer adds 2 to his roll. The troll adds 4 to his. With a 17 versus a 3, the arrow definitely goes wide. The dwarf archer will then move. We're going to go 4 inches to the end there and then 1 sideways.
Come on, old fig. It's as big as a house.
Thazzik will advance 5 inches to here, and he will attempt to cast Elemental Bolt towards that troll. So he needs a 10 to successfully cast.
So
Nope, no luck there. The magic eludes him.
No, I've forgotten it.
And finally, this dwarf at arms. He's going to move 5 inches over here, followed by 2.5 into contact with that orc archer. At least tie that up for the time being. With that, we are on to the creatures phase. Let's start with that troll.
Tiny, shiny man.
The troll will move towards its closest target. Have about 5 inches there, and almost 6 there, so it's definitely the archer. So the troll lumbers over there. And it was at 5 inches, and a movement of 4, that is 2 actions, so that's the troll's turn. We have these 2 orcs who will move towards their closest target they can see, so 6 inches, followed by a further 3 out into the centre here. And finally, this Orc Archer will attack that man-at-arms. Well, that Dwarf-at-arms. The Orc Archer adds +1, the Dwarf adds +3. A 7 is going to carry the day, but it's not enough to cause any damage. That's the creatures done, so on to the companions phase. There are no companions, so we go to the event phase. Flipping over our card, we have a 10. Place 2 giant spiders at the boundary between the tunnels and the hall. The spiders are neutral and will attack their closest target. If a spider kills a model, it will retreat to the tunnels and disappear.
Then we'll place one either side, like so.
Right, Ranger turn 6. So starting again with Forgrin, activating 2 companions. That Dwarf at Arms is just within 3 inches of him. So we'll activate 1, 2, 3 there. Forgrin is going to use his 7.5 inches of movement to run around Thazzik and leap over the boxes and crates there to the other side. So getting to here, he will have to make a jump roll. The target number, he is jumping
2 inches, so the target number is 3.
Forgrin has a +0 to his acrobatics, so he'll need a 3 or more. A 6 will do it. It's not spectacular, but he manages to jump over to the other side of those crates and move a little bit further around here. The Guards Dwarf here will attempt a running jump over that obstacle as well. He is going about an inch, so the target number for that is 2. He's adding 0 to it. A 13 is more than enough. And he'll finish his movements over here in contact with that Orc. He'll be making an attack with a +5, +3 base, and then +2 for having a friend nearby. The Orc adds 1 to its dice. A 20 from the Guards Dwarf will win that. 20 versus the armor of 11 will be 9 points. +2 from the two-handed weapon, 11 points, is enough to kill that Orc.
Who's next?
And finally, this fella here will... I want to deal with that Troll, so he's going to go 5 inches into contact with the Troll.
Oh, Cardan, this is the worst idea you've ever had.
And attack that. The Troll adds 4 to its roll. The Dwarf at Arms will add 5, 3 base, +2 for having a friend. A 22 versus a 6 means the Dwarf wins. 22 versus the Troll's armor of 14 does 8 points of damage.
So the Troll has 8 wounds remaining. Oh, I cannot believe that word.
Next up is Thazzik. Thazzik will, from where he is, attempt to cast Elemental Ball onto this Orc here. So he will require a 12 to successfully cast that. A 3 isn't going to do it. Come on, Thazzik.
Never mind.
Not this again. And he's also going to attempt to jump over those boxes. Again, the target number is 3. We're going to give Thazzik a -1 to his roll because he's old. So he's looking for a 4. A 5. He just manages to clamber over those boxes. But that's as far as he's going to go.
Oh dear.
Because that was hard work.
I'm too old for this.
And then his mate, the Archer, will attempt to attack the Troll as well.
Oldfig, this is your moment.
The Archer will get +4, 2 base and 2 for a friend, and the Troll gets +4. So a 20 from the Troll versus a 17 from the Archer means the Troll wins. 20 versus an armor of 12 does 8 points of damage +2 because the Troll has a two-handed weapon. So 10 points of damage is enough to kill that Archer. That was a mistake.
Squashed.
Alright, on to the creature phase. So we'll be starting with the Orcs. This one will move around
You're mine, dwarf.
to attack the Dwarf at Arms there. The Orc receives +4 because it's in combat with a friend, and the Dwarf receives +3. 13 from the Dwarf and 13 from the Orc, I mean they're even. 13 versus armor 13 of the dwarf does no damage, but 13 versus 12 of the orc does 1 point of damage, and so that orc has 9 points remaining. I think realistically this other orc is going to join his mate and also attack that dwarf at arms. That orc will receive +6 though, 2 base, and then 4 for having friends versus +3 from the dwarf. A 20 is definitely going to beat the dwarf's 12. 20 versus armor of 13 does 7 points of damage, which is enough to kill that dwarf at arms.
Lord, forgive me.
That's followed by the troll. The troll will lumber forward into combat with Thazzik.
Squash you.
And attempt to clobber him. So Thazzik receives +2 to his fight. He has got a staff, so he'll take 1 less damage if the troll wins. So Thazzik is +2, the troll is +4. The troll wins that with a 16. 16 versus Thazzik's armor of 11 is 5 points of damage. 1 is absorbed by the staff, 3 are absorbed by his elemental shield, so that's 1 point of damage that goes through. Thazzik has 13 remaining.
Oh dear.
Finally, we have the spiders that have come in from the caverns. They have a move of 6, heading towards their closest target, up to 9 inches. This first one is going to use a double move to get into contact with that orc. And, I'll give that 6 inches for this giant spider to attack the dwarf guardsman there. So the dwarf adds +3 to his dice roll. The giant spider adds +0. A natural 20 from the dwarf will definitely win that fight. And with a health of 4, the spider goes down.
Ugh, where did ye come from? Ugh.
That brings us to the companion phase. There's no companions left to act, so we'll go on to the event phase. Flipping over the card, we have a 7. 7, place 2 goblin soldiers in front of door 2. So 2 goblin soldiers in front of door 2.
We heard there was a party.
It is the hero phase of turn 7, the ranger phase of turn 7. Starting with Forgrin, you really need to get that door open, but at the same time we don't want to leave Thazzik to the mercy of the troll. So Forgrin is going to run around the debris there and attack the troll from the side. Forgrin will use his Frenzied Attack special ability for this combat to add +5 to his fight roll. So he is +4 base, +2 for having a friend, and then +5 for the Frenzied Attack. So he's adding 11 to his dice roll versus the 4 from the troll. So this pays off. It will. 19 from the troll and 24 from Forgrin, so the 24 will carry that. 24 versus the troll's armor of 14 is 10 points of damage, +2 for a 2-handed weapon. Means the troll goes down.
Did you see that? Forgrin Troll Slayer.
And that's Forgrin's turn, so we're on to Thazzik. Thazzik will attempt to cast Elemental Ball again on this orc here.
Oh, I remember it now.
He needs a 12 to successfully cast it.
Sergita exploded.
A 14 means that is a success. Now I need to find out what it does. Right, so the target and each model within 1.5 inches of it, meaning these two here as well, all suffer a +5 ranged attack. So starting with the central figure, +5 versus his defense of +2. No luck there. The wounded orc, a 23 is definitely going to do that, versus armor of 12 is 11 points, so that guy's wiped out. And the spider adds +0 to his roll. So an 18 versus an 18 means it's equal, which for a ranged attack is unfortunately a miss. So no luck there. Oh well, that was at least one target taken out. And then Thazzik will use his second action to move towards the southern door. 5 inches. That is the ranger phase. On to the creature phase. So we have these 2 goblin soldiers. They will be rushing in. 6 inches followed by 3. We'll have this orc attacking that spider.
The orc gets +2 on the red dice, and the spider will be +0 on the blue.
A 15 versus a 14 means that the spider wins that one. 15 versus armour of 12 means the orc takes 3 points of damage and has 7 remaining. It is also poisoned and can only take 1 action per turn. And finally, the spider will act and attack that orc as well. So once again, read for the orc. Did I get that in the right way? I think I did. Read for the orc. The spider definitely wins that one there. 18 versus armour of 12 means 6 points of damage, so the orc is down to 1. Then it is the companions phase. Last companion is this guard's dwarf. He will be making a run to help out his mates, so he goes 7.5 inches and he's going to run around that combat and to there. That's companions done, so we are on to the event phase. Let's flip over our event card. 8. Place 2 goblin soldiers in front of door 1. We are on to the ranger phase of turn 8. Starting with Forgrin. Forgrin is going to make a run for the door. 5 inches will get him into contact with it. He then has to make a strength check to open the door. The target number is 13. And Forgrin receives +3 to his strength. So he's going to require a 10. A 7, no luck, the door is currently stuck.
Come on, you damn thing.
He will activate his companion at the same time. It's too far away to help at the moment, but he's going to back up because there's no point in giving the goblins free attacks. Then we'll have Thazzik. Thazzik is going to attempt to cast Elemental Ball on that goblin there. So the casting number for that is once again 12.
Sergita Explodere.
A 13 successfully casted. So a +5 attack versus that goblin soldier. The goblin soldier adds +1. So 19 versus 15 will win. 19 versus armour of 12 means 7 points of damage. So that goblin has 3 left. And same for the one next to it. Oh, that's pretty good. 23 is definitely going to carry that for Thazzik. 23 versus armour of 12 is 11 points of damage, and that will kill that goblin.
It burns.
That's the ranger's turn. On to the creature's turn. So we're going to start with the goblins in the distance. They will be moving 9 inches. Let's get them to about there. The spider has the most HP next, so he will be making an attack against the orc. He receives +0, the orc receives +2, and the orc will be the red dice. With an 18, the orc is going to win that. 18 versus the armour of 12 is 10 points of damage, which is more than enough to kill that spider. The goblin is up next. The goblin will have to... The goblin will require a double move to get into contact with the guard's dwarf there. And finally, this orc, with a double move, will get into contact with Thazzik. That's better. Alright, no companions, so we're going to go on to the event phase. And we'll flip over our event card. A 9. I don't think 9's very good. Rockfall. Randomly select 2 models. Both figures immediately suffer a +2 shooting attack as rocks fall from the ceiling of the decaying hall. Alright. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 models there. So let's grab a couple of D8s. And going from top to bottom, left to right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and re-rolling 8s. And of course we can't have the same model twice. An 8 and a 3, so Forgrim gets hit, as does the wounded orc in the middle. Let's start with the orc. The orc receives +2 to its roll. Orc is red, rock is blue. Orc receives +2, rock receives +2. The orc dodges that. Forgrim. Forgrim will be the blue dice at +4, and the rock is red at +2. 18, that rock strikes Forgrim right on the top of the head. 18 versus armor of 13 means he takes 5 points of damage and has 13 remaining.
You see me deal to that troll. Ow!
Ow! Right, that's the end of the event phase. So we're on to Ranger turn 9. We are very quickly running out of time. Forgrim is going to attempt to open that door. So he must make a strength check with a target number of 13. Adding 3 to the roll means he will require a 10 or more. A 19, he manages to open the gate.
It's pulled.
With the southern gate open, we now have to wait until the end of turn 10 and hope everybody survives. So next up is going to be this guard's dwarf attacking that goblin soldier. The dwarf adds +3 to his roll. The soldier will be adding +1. With an 18, the goblin soldier definitely wins that. 18 versus armor of 12 does 6 points of damage, and that guard's dwarf goes down. Well, that made things look a little bit more desperate. Next up is going to be Thazzik. Thazzik, rather than fighting at the moment, I think is going to cast Elemental Shield on himself. Target number is 10, and that'll absorb the next 3 points of damage he takes.
No.
With a 2, he fails to cast it. Come on, Thazzik.
No, that's the wrong one.
And that is the end of the heroes, or the end of the rangers phase. On to the creatures phase. Our goblin soldiers have the most health, so we start with them. They're going to move 9 inches. This goblin has the next highest health, so he will be moving into contact with Forgrim and attacking him. Forgrim receives +4 to his dice roll, and the goblin receives +1 to his. With a 13, Forgrim is beaten, but a 13 is not high enough to cause any damage, as Forgrim's armor is 13. Finally, we have this orc attacking Thazzik. Thazzik receives +2 to his dice roll. The orc receives +2 to his. Thazzik wins with a 10, but that's not enough to cause any damage. But he is going to, however, having won the fight, force the orc back by 1 inch.
Away, you beast!
That's all the creatures, so we're on to the companions' turn. No companions, so events. Flip over the next card, and we have an ace. Ace is 2 orc soldiers in front of door 1. Ranger phase on turn 10, so this is the final turn. All they've got to do is survive. To help out that, we've got to try and thin these numbers a bit though. So starting with Forgrim, he'll be attacking that goblin soldier. So Forgrim receives +4. The goblin soldier receives +1. Forgrim wins with an 18. 18 versus the goblin's armor of 12 Means it takes 6 points of damage, which is more than enough to kill it.
Now it's my turn.
And then Forgrim will use his second action to move into contact with that orc. That's a terrible idea, but we'll stick with it. Alright, Thazzik is up next. Thazzik is going to move sideways. And he'll be attempting to cast Elemental Ball onto that goblin. So the casting number for that is 12.
Shaggy! No.
With a 1, that is definitely not going to happen. Alright.
I've forgotten miscast damage this whole game. Oh well, let's make up for it now. He failed there and he took 12 points of damage. I think that's how it works. It'll be fine. Leaving him with 1 left, as everything finally caught up to him.
Oh, my nose is bleeding.
Alright, on to the creatures phase. I'm going to start with the goblins. The first one will be moving into contact with Forgrim. You know what? No, it's going to move around Forgrim and into contact with Thazzik. Because Thazzik forgot the miscast rules. And it will attack him. So, Thazzik receives +2, the goblin receives +1. With a natural 20, the goblin definitely wins that, and strikes hard enough to cut Thazzik down.
Make it bleed. Oh my.
This goblin will move into contact with Forgrim. Probably lucky that wasn't on Forgrim actually. And attack him. The goblin receives +4, +1 base, +2 for the orc being there, and an additional +1 for the gang up rule. Versus Forgrim's +4. Forgrim wins that with a 14. A 14 versus the goblin's armor of 12 means it takes 2 points of damage and has 8 remaining.
Yeah, think you can take me?
Forgrim will choose to push that back 1 inch as well as part of winning the fight.
I'm Forgrim Trollslayer.
The orcs across the way are going to run 9 inches. And then the orc in contact with Forgrim is going to attack him.
On you, pig-nosed arse sniffer!
The orc receives +2, Forgrim receives +4. Oh gosh, a 20 from the orc versus Forgrim's 5. 20 versus Forgrim's armor of 13 means he takes 7 points of damage and has 6 remaining.
Come on, do it again, harder, you limp-wristed dung smuggler!
That is the creatures phase. On to the companions. None of those. Events. Don't think there's anything that can affect the outcome at this stage though. A jack. 2 wolves in front of door 2. And then that is the end of turn 10. We have Forgrim on his feet with 6 hit points remaining, but that is enough to carry the day as reinforcements arrive through the southern gate.
And we're back. Thanks for hanging out. That was a thing. Going through the editing process, I realised just how much I butchered all of the rules, but that happens. The main thing is, I had a great time, and I hope you enjoyed the ride. One great thing about solo gaming is that if you do stuff up the rules, as long as you enjoy yourself, it's fine. You're not inconveniencing anybody else, and nobody's the wiser, unless you upload it online. Last. Thazzik being cut down was unfortunate. I have decided not to roll to see if he survives though, as I think it's a fitting end for him to fall defending the gate into his ancestral home, though losing his knowledge and abilities is going to be difficult for Baradic and the gang. Forgrim did well, and he may have just earned a new title, which is pretty sweet. I like to think of him at the end there as leaning on his axe, covered in blood, with the South Pass spears rushing through the gate behind him, just standing there by sheer force of will alone. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.